Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. These are busy and fun times for sports in Kansas City with the success of the Royals and Chiefs. And on today's show, we talk about both teams with Star columnists Vahe Gregorian and Sam McDowell. That's the undefeated Chiefs, 5-0 for the first time since 2018, and the Royals, who are in the American League Division Series against the Yankees. It was fun catching up with Sam and Vahe. Let's pick up the conversation.
Heck, it was one of my thoughts going into the postseason in general is that the Royals are well positioned to do some damage, and that hasn't changed. It's because of their starting pitching, and it's not only that. I mean, they figured out their bullpen in September. You know, part of the reason that I think they're so well positioned with their bullpen is they were playing these playoff-like games for the last 3 weeks of the regular season, to where they had to win games and every game felt this must win, to where you're equipping your bullpen to win that night. And that's the most important thing every night. That's how the playoffs work. And now we're seeing a team that struggled to get its bullpen together, seems to have these roles carved out. It didn't just happen in the postseason. It happened because they were playing that way in September.
Listen, the idea that the Royals bullpen looks nothing like the bullpen at the start of the season. I mean, how many guys are there now that were there on opening day?
I think just two. Raul Zerpa's back, but he was obviously
he went down.
Schreiber's part of it, but I believe that might be it.
Yeah, Sam Long didn't come till later, right?
Yeah, Sam Long was mid-season.
And obviously Urseg was after the trade deadline.
Bubic was injured.
Bubic was still hurt.
Daniel Lynch is not part of that bullpen. Brady Singer, we haven't seen yet. He was not part of that bullpen. He was obviously in the rotation. So, yeah, I think it's just those two guys.
That's fascinating when you put it that way, because that means literally not one of those guys stayed the whole season in the bullpen. Am I thinking that through correctly?
Schreiber would have.
Schreiber, except he was hurt. But I mean,
yeah.
And which is a different point. But anyway, that's pretty interesting. That's a pretty radical makeover during a season.
Which is why J.J. Picollo is going to be Executive of the Year, I believe. It should be, right? You can argue about Matt Quatraro as Manager of the Year just because there are some other great candidates. But I don't think there's any doubt that J.J. Picollo had the best year in baseball by an executive.
Sam wrote a really good piece about that. But one quick thought, and Sam got into this too, and I think it's kind of interesting that there's a little bit of the fusion between JJ and Matt Quatraro that is part of this too. I mean, JJ will tell you, has told Sam, has told us that getting to know Matt and how he wants to run a team over the course of this time now in his second season, they tried to contour some things to what Matt felt he needed to run a team. And you see that in the way they play almost the whole roster every chance they can get. It's sort of a different configuration, and Sam can speak to it better because, you know, he pointed out how JJ knew he needed to change and embrace some new thinking that Matt could bring.
Yeah, I mean, this very much, I mean, when you see the day-to-day operations of the Royals, I mean, it very much is Matt Quatraro's team. And a lot of this is what you just said, Vahe. I mean, the thing that struck me about J.J. Picollo is he's been in baseball since 1999. He's had a lot of time to think, once I get to run the baseball operations department, here's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to do A, B, and C. Just wait till I get my chance. And then he gets his chance, and his first thought is, let's see what everyone else is doing. Let's see what we're missing. Let's see where our blind spots are. And I think what Matt Quatraro has done is revealed a lot of those blind spots. But it takes a lot, I think, just in a personality, in a person to allow somebody to institute a lot of changes. And look, I mean, that's the day-to-day of this year. But J.J. Picollo has instituted a lot of changes throughout this organization that they hope have foundational pillars for future years as well.
You know, the crazy stat, the Royals, dating back to 1985, have won 9 of their last 10 series. You know, we're recording this as the Royals are preparing to play Game 3 against the Yankees, and it's tied at 1. But This is a franchise that lost 6 of its first 7 and have now won 9 of 10.
Part of the reason for that, Blair, is I think it was Sarah Langs who had this stat a couple days ago that I think the Royals have won like 8 straight game 2s, which is kind of a crazy stat, but it's also a very pivotal. It can be a very 8 straight game 2s in postseason series. It ties a record. The Braves did that over a 13-year span from 2001 to 2013, and those. I mean, a lot of times when you're playing on the road, I mean, game 2 is pretty pivotal, snatching one on the road.
Yeah, I remember like in 2014, both of the series started on the road with the Angels and the Orioles, and the Royals won both of those. So that's crazy too. So, all right, good way to transition over to the Chiefs. And speaking of, kind of good vibes for a team. Another interesting stat, I didn't realize this until I looked it up this morning. Chiefs are 5-0, and they haven't had a start this good since 2018, since Mahomes' first year as a starter. Previously, and I'll just go in reverse order, 5-0 this year, 4-1 in each of 23 and 22, 2-3. Remember that start in 2021, 4-1 both in 2020 and 2019. So here they are playing certainly at best uneven football, especially on offense. Have had to deal with these, rash of injuries, and only the Chiefs and the Minnesota Vikings have are undefeated, right? Perfect records in the NFL. So what does it say? What does it say about the Chiefs and what they're doing and how they're doing it?
Well, one thing I just point to, and Sam wrote a real snapshot of this in a lot of ways in his column off the game the other night about all the guys the Chiefs have brought back and contoured to what they're doing here. And that's the thing I keep thinking about is sort of the synergy between Brett Veach and Andy Reid and his coordinators, and the entirely complementary understanding of that this is about winning, not winning the way that you've got to do it one way or another. That they've had a defensive evolution the last couple of years that allows them to do a few different things. They've had to change the offense a few different ways, a few different times now because of personnel, and you couldn't do that if you didn't have that kind of harmony among all those pieces, and obviously that kind of wisdom. I mean, there's some things that seem kind of unsightly to us, and you wish X, Y, or Z would work differently. And those games typically seem to be, come down to a terrifying end for the fans. But they've won 11 games in a row, and they've won 2 Super Bowls in a row, and it's not just some roll of the dice. So I maybe Sam will agree or disagree, but I do think that piece he wrote the other day speaks to just another element of why this works for the Chiefs, that they find a way to plug and play and understand their weaknesses and keep going.
Kind of an island of misfit toys, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, Vahe has written a lot about this, the fact that they've won a lot of these close games. And I think a primary reason for that is they have different ways to win games in a way they didn't at the start of this Patrick Mahomes tenure. The defense is in a different place over these last couple of years. And look, Steve Spagnuolo's defense was good enough in 2019, 2020, and 21, but it's been different these past couple of years to where the defense can outright win games. And I think that's why they win so many close games, is you feel confident with the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands. You also feel confident if it comes down to your defense needing to stop at the last drive like we saw him get in Atlanta. But I thought this game against the Saints was just very much an Andy Reid game. Like, it's a compliment to Andy Reid that he's able to plug in Juju Smith-Schuster, who was cut by the Patriots team that is the worst passing offense in the league. Samaje Perine, who was cut by a bad Broncos offense. Kareem Hunt, who was sitting on his couch watching football in the opening couple weeks of the season. Jody Fortson, who was cut by the Dolphins. McCole Hardman, who a bad Jets offense wanted nothing to do with last year. That group combines for 294 yards of offense. And that is like, it's not like the Chiefs, it is a credit to the front office for knowing these guys would be good fits for Andy Reid's offense. but it's not as though the Chiefs are seeing talent where no other team is seeing talent. They're getting the most out of talent to where other teams say, I can't get anything out of this guy. He's not useful to my roster. And that's why I think it's such a compliment to Andy Reid, and particularly the scheme that he and game plan that he had on Monday against the Saints.
Yeah, and look, we're talking about several former Chiefs coming back to, Samaje Perine obviously wasn't a former Chief, but he's been good in his role. But the others absolutely come back and feel comfortable and, with the playbook and the locker room with their teammates. I absolutely think I went around and talked to Kareem Hunt and Juju Smith-Schuster about that last week, and there's absolutely something to that, a comfort level. And in your column, Sam, you wrote they all mentioned Andy Reid too.
The first thing out of their mouths.
Yep, gets the best out of them. So it also occurred to me the big numbers that the Chiefs rolled had their best offensive game of the season against the Saints. 102 rushing yards for Kareem Hunt, 130 receiving yards for Juju Smith-Schuster. Big number, total offense numbers. Patrick Mahomes had his best, passing yardage game, 331, I believe it was. And yet, Patrick Mahomes had his second lowest quarterback rating game of the season. And I thought, here all these guys are piling up their season high numbers, and yet Mahomes, I don't know what his PFF grade was for the game, but probably not great. I know Chris Jones was the highest graded of all the Chiefs, and he should be. He really dominated the game. But it's almost like Patrick Mahomes made sure everybody else got theirs, and when he tried to get his on touchdown passes, you had the penalty on Juwan Taylor on his touchdown pass to Noah Gray. You had his spin move where he looked like he was going to hit Perine in the end zone, but Perine stopped his route and that ball fell incomplete. He didn't get a touchdown pass. The type of moment that not only makes the game more comfortable for the Chiefs, but increases Patrick Mahomes' quarterback rating. So I just thought it's kind of if having a season high 331 yards passing can be a selfless type of game, I thought and unselfish. I thought Patrick Mahomes had that.
I agree with that, Blair, and I think it's interesting. There's a couple of different lenses to look at Patrick's game through. On one hand, he's just that close to having a three touchdown pass day. Really, I mean, I can't remember if the Perine play and the other one call back were on the same drive, but in essence, he's in that position to do that. And I thought in a lot of ways he just looked totally in command. But I will say, and this was pointed out to me by a press box wag sitting next to me during the game, and I can't unsee it. He really has gotten a little bit into the habit of leaving the pocket when he doesn't have to. And I don't know what that cost them specifically in this game. And you'd have to really go back through each play, but it is interesting that that's kind of developed. And I think it's a problematic habit. And Sam, you're the guy who was sitting next to the press box wag who said that, or him really well. What do you think that repercussions of that are? And is it something that you think's been going on longer than I've realized?
Yeah, I really think it started in the Atlanta game, which was a result of the week before when Kingsley Suamataia was so bad he got benched. The Chiefs tackles did not play well on Monday. Wanya Morris had a tough night, and Juwan Taylor had a really tough night. And I think we're seeing situations, and when Patrick Mahomes is anticipating that things are not going to go well before the snap happens and is looking for the escape hatch. The PFF keeps track of quarterback pressures. He was pressured more than any quarterback in the league last week, but they also attribute who the pressure is, who's responsible for that quarterback pressure. Patrick Mahomes was responsible for 6 pressures himself, and no other quarterback in the league was responsible last week for more than 4. He now leads the league in his own pressures. And so I think that is a result of him escaping the pocket too early or him not stepping up when there's an opportunity to step up. I encourage people to watch that Perine play that Blair's talking about. It's a great play to buy more time. but he starts buying more time before he needs to, when there's just the opportunity to step up in the pocket and rip it. But any time he goes through something like this, there's a root cause of it. It's not in his own mind. And the cause of it right now is his tackles are not playing great.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that he must just not have the trust in his tackles right now.
The appearance of it. Certainly the appearance.
Yep. Okay, guys, that was a great conversation as always. I really appreciate you hanging out, and big thanks to Monty Davis and Randy Mason for producing the podcast and the YouTube channel. Hey, join us again next week when we talk sports in Kansas City on SportsBeat KC.